Hey everybody, some Gadget Guy here, and we're finally getting around to wrapping up a review on the Lumia 1520, the phablet from Nokia running Windows Phone 8. Now, I got this phone a little bit later, so I didn't do my normal thing of doing like a big, long intro first impressions video and then doing the wrap-up. I went straight into just reviewing it, and I have to say, this has been a phenomenal experience. You guys know I'm not a huge fan of the phablet. I have these tiny, girly little hands, so, in my hands, it's kind of a cumbersome experience for a lot of these larger screen devices. And one of the things that I kind of wanted to show off, just because I haven't seen anyone do an outright comparison with the 1520 and a bunch of other phones, was just seeing how much larger this phone is than most of its competition. So starting off with older Windows Phone devices, this is the 1520 next to the Lumia 1020. This is a 4.5-inch screen versus the 1520 6-inch screen. Stepping up to the Lumia Icon with a 5-inch screen, you can see it's still getting dwarfed by the 1520. And it's just kind of funny because a 5-inch screen used to be ridiculously huge, and now it's just kind of normal. 5.2-inch screen with the LG G2, still dwarfing the 5.5-inch screen on the LG Optimus G Pro. This is a slightly older style phablet design, very similar to like a Galaxy Note 2. And it's not until we get to something audacious like the LG G Flex that this thing has any competition for what we would still call a phone, being a large screen device. Nokia's current design aesthetic might actually be getting in its own way a little bit with these sharp corners, and this rectangular design makes it just a little bit more awkward to hold in the hand, as a phone, I should say, than some of its other large screen competitors like this G Flex, which features a slightly more rounded corner design. I mean, not even the curve to the screen. Oh man, this thing is like super sensitive. Not only just the curve to the screen, but also just how these edges might fit as you hold them down in the base of your palm. This is a slightly easier experience to get around if you're trying to use this as a phone when you're out and about. So that's become one of the most crucial aspects of talking about the 1520, is that I don't particularly enjoy the mobility experience of a device this big. Now, what I have noticed about the 1520 is this is becoming one of my preferred experiences when I know I'm going to be staying put for just a little while. And it's almost completely unseated my mobile tablet use. So while I used to carry around a phone and my little Nexus 7, a device like the 1520 or some of these other phablets that are starting to get into 6-inch screens, they do a really handy job of unseating my desire to have another mobile screen with me at any given time. If I'm kicking it on the couch or if I'm in the studio and I already have this thing with me, I don't necessarily need to pick this up either. And especially compared to some of these other 7-inch tablets that we've played with in the past, just everything about the 1520 is just a little bit more powerful or a little bit better, has a better camera, better specs internally. And so that experience, minus a few of the apps that don't translate back and forth, has just been nicer on the 1520 than our mini tablets. This is the Lumia 1520 on AT&T, which of course means that it's got less internal storage and it does not have the QI wireless charging standard built in. Like other Nokia devices, you do need to have some kind of sled, and there are connectors on the back here that will then connect a plate that will allow you to use QI wireless charging. It's been very disappointing seeing AT&T support PMA when Nokia has done a really good job of moving the QI platform forward. The rest of the specs, we already know now. It's got the Qualcomm 800 series processor, moving Windows Phone up into a much more competitive space. It does have the full 1080p screen, which now allows for enough resolution to support 3 rows of tiles, as opposed to older Windows phones, which would just have 2 rows of live tiles. So that definitely helps maximize screen real estate. And it gives you the ability to have a full-sized tile next to a medium-sized tile, or to do combinations of mini tiles so that you can really maximize how much stuff that you can keep on your home screen. This is really helpful as we still don't have a proper notification center in Windows Phone. You'll definitely want to keep services that you use a lot on your home screen so that they can show up as notification tiles. Now, of course, fit and finish on any Nokia device is simply excellent. I love their build quality and I love their design ethic, even if sometimes I don't always appreciate blocky corners on my phones. It's definitely unique though, and you'll never confuse a Nokia for another device. And it needs to be reiterated. I love matte finish on Premier phones. I think this feels so much more premium, so much more high end than any of the glossy backed phones, regardless of the internals. It's just this satiny, smooth finish, which has a really nice texture and a gripability to it. Really helps you hold on to the device, and it doesn't ever get slick or that wet bar of soap feeling if you have really sweaty hands like I do. That's always something I've definitely appreciated about Nokia aesthetics, and especially that it always comes in a very colorful design package. And especially when you compare it, I mean, this is the Optimus G Pro, which is a little bit older, but that glossy finish just does a tremendous job of showing fingerprint smudges. And as it ages, it gets scuffed up and it gets scratched. It's just not going to look as nice over the life of a 2-year contract, in my opinion, as a matte finish device will. In my camera bag, it got kind of chewed up when it accidentally got tossed into a pocket with some extension tubes and some other accessories that nicked the crap out of the sides of this phone. And I need to go through and just sort of buff these out a little bit, but you can see that having a colored plastic as opposed to a paint finish means that these scratches and abrasions just don't show up as much as they will on another device which has sort of a glossy finish or is just sort of painted to look like it's got some sort of carbon fiber build quality. And so once I kind of just smooth that out a little bit, it's going to be nearly invisible, even though it took kind of a pretty bad grinding right there. And I have to say, just in general, for this screen being as large as it is and this device being as large as it is, it really does feel like it's going to last me the length of a 2-year contract, so long as I don't like corner drop it onto concrete from ear height. So in terms of general fit and finish, the only nitpicky that I have about the 1520 are these split doors. There's a door for your SIM card slot and a door for your memory card. These two doors don't fit snugly against each other, and you get this sort of unfortunate little rattle as these two pieces sort of bump up against each other. And it's a little uncharacteristic of the rest of Nokia's design. So I kind of wish that they had done something a little closer to what they did on the 2520, where the SIM card and the memory card are behind one door. And if you have to get to your memory card, you just know that you're going to be popping out your SIM card as well. And I think that would be a compromise everyone would be able to understand for instead of having two doors that don't fit very snugly together and rattle, we would just have one door, which I think would be a much cleaner experience for a device this large. The entire multimedia experience on the Lumia 1520 is excellent. I already have a speaker video out so you can hear how the speaker sounds, and it's a very high quality, it's a very loud speaker for a phone. It's just this phenomenal pure view camera that we're dealing with, and it performs almost exactly the same as the camera on the Icon. And we also have these wonderful microphones in here, and definitely go check out that Icon video review. There's a scene that I do overlooking a freeway where you can hear the car tires rolling over bumps and brakes in our horrible California freeway system. You can actually hear the tire noise over the noise reduction that these microphones are able to employ. It's just incredible performance all around. I mean, it's excellent optics, but even the audio experience on a Nokia phone is just second to none. And aside from standalone apps that Nokia has provided to improve the Windows Phone experience, like the wonderful Nokia camera app, and like Nokia Mix Radio, which I've just started using, is actually a pretty good music discovery platform. They have just done a terrific job of providing apps in the Nokia collection to really highlight services that you might find interesting, especially as there's this constant, sort of talking point about how a Windows Phone doesn't have apps. And definitely the app experience is still lagging behind Android and iOS, but there are so many wonderful services that are here now that you probably don't need to be as afraid of Windows Phone as a platform. And Nokia, not only in delivering their own apps and services, are doing a terrific job of highlighting other apps and services and games that you might want to play with. In fact, there's a pretty decent Spotify client on Windows Phone. This job lens is kind of silly, but it's kind of interesting just to kind of play with what's in your area. What it does is it fires up the camera. You do this augmented reality job search no matter where you are. 500 pics, selfie application right there. If you want to get your temple run on, you can do your temple run. There's an Adidas Mini Coach for those of you who are into health and fitness apps. There is Instagram, even though it's crappy, you should still use 6tag. If you're worried about having an Instagram client, it's here. All of these Nokia services, which are excellent. Refocus, I did a video on Refocus, Cinemagraph, video trimming, photo beamer. If you just want to send a photo to another, display, you can sort of tag a QR code and have it show up. The ecosystem is expanded faster than I thought it would, even though, we're still lacking those numbers. Like, we don't have the hundreds of thousands of apps that you have on Android. But when you can do banking through Mint, you can get your snow reports through Burton, you have My Talking Tom, you can still communicate with all of your buddies on WhatsApp, you can fire up Redbox to do videos. We have a Vine client. You can do Papyrus, you can do ratings. We have Waze for turn-by-turn navigation. If you like Waze, I would definitely check that out. And then a number of just fun games like Tiny Death Star, ESPN Fantasy Football, Tetris Blitz. I mean, this is just part of the Nokia collection of apps that they're trying to highlight, and it's pretty well fleshed out. I mean, those of you who are even doing activity and sports stuff, we have a GoPro client to allow you to connect to GoPro cameras. I mean, that is pretty sweet. And this is just the Nokia collection, let alone the rest of the Microsoft store. It's just really come to a head with the 1520, especially now that we've got competitive hardware, 1080p screens, Qualcomm 800 quad cores. This is a serious performance package, and developers are starting to take advantage of all of this extra horsepower. Now, that extra horsepower is definitely welcome, but you don't necessarily see as much of an advantage when you're just sort of flicking through, live tiles, or you flying through menus and lists and stuff like that. Windows Phone is a very power efficient OS, so it doesn't necessarily feel that much smoother than what we were using on the lower resolution and dual core processor phones like this Lumia 1020. Now, where you do see a nice little speed advantage is when you're firing up the camera. And especially compared to the 1020, where this older dual core is having to launch a 40 megapixel image sensor and then start processing information from that in real time, this much more powerful quad core is only having to launch a 20 megapixel image sensor. Now, this is a little difficult for me to demonstrate on camera, but let's see if I can actually launch these at least close to the same time. I'm gonna hit these buttons in 3, 2, 1. And while that fraction of a second might not feel like it was a profound improvement, I can tell you in real world situations, that extra little time that gets me to my camera app just a little bit faster has definitely made the difference between landing the shot and not landing the shot. And it's definitely one of the few criticisms I can levy at the camera on the 1020 is that it's definitely slower than a lot of the other competitors out there. And getting into the rest of the phone hardware, it's almost getting a little bit dull talking about how excellent a number of our premier phones are. Nokia especially, they always include wonderful earpieces. This is a very loud earpiece to take calls on. The microphone setup with all of the noise reduction capabilities is just top notch. Never had any complaints on a phone call using the 1520. People have always said that I was loud enough to be heard. And now that we've got Windows Phone in a larger shell, this is a 3400 milliamp hour battery, and battery life was better than average. I would say it's upper mid pack. It's definitely having to contend with a much larger, much brighter screen than any Windows Phone we've used in the past. So definitely a good chunk of that battery life is just going to get absorbed by all of this extra capability. But that Qualcomm 800 chipset does a great job of radio management. So this has easily been an all-day phone for me, sometimes drifting into even a day and a half or 2 days of use, even though I tend to be a really heavy user, especially on the camera. The more you fire up Nokia cameras, the faster your battery life is going to drain, just because they're monster cameras and they take a lot of processing power to use. And on the AT&T version in my neck of the woods here in Southern California, outside of LA, they've been doing a wonderful job upgrading their network. I've been getting excellent speeds on this device, though I do have a few of those little nitpicky criticisms that I really, really wish that AT&T hadn't messed with the wireless charging built into the 1520. So the American version of the 1520, it's going to feel like you're missing out on a feature that I think the rest of the Nokia community or the rest of the Nokia ecosystem is really enjoying, the ability to just take your phone, lie it on a pad, and charge it, as opposed to always having to find a USB cable to plug it in. I mean, that sounds like such a first world problem, but once you start using it, especially like since that was something that we had with the Lumia 920 on AT&T, you get used to it, and it's a really nice feature to have, and it's pretty convenient. I mean, I want to get nitpicky about the camera on the 1020, that this is a better camera than the camera on the 1520, but it's really difficult getting overly upset about having the second best camera on a phone that I've ever used. And all of the rest of the performance improvements and the audio improvements baked into the 1520 trump anything that this 1020 can handle when we're talking about day-to-day phone usage. You kind of have to know, and you'll definitely want to play with one in person if you're thinking about picking one of these up, because this sort of phablet size is a personal preference that only you'll be able to make a determination on once you actually put it in your hands. And I've put this phone into other people's hands, and I don't think they're ever really prepared for just how large this thing is. I mean, this even makes Galaxy Notes feel a little bit small. So you'll definitely want to play with that experience. And I really don't want to hit the 1520 too hard, because I think it's pretty clear by now, if you've seen any of my other videos, that I have a little bit of a bias against super large screen devices, seeing as how I have tiny little hands. But if you're in the market for that premium computing experience, and you don't want to have to carry around a phone and a mini tablet everywhere you go, then this is certainly something that I would recommend checking out. And if you're on AT&T, like I said, this is the best Windows Phone experience that you can partake in. I mean, it's just an amazing performer, an amazing all-rounder, an incredible camera experience. And if this type of experience is what you're in the market for, I really think you're gonna like it if you give it a fair shot. And while this isn't necessarily a part of reviewing the 1520, this is just sort of a general Nokia note in terms of their current design language and aesthetic, in that I think it's kind of curious watching them split their design language up. We now have a line of Nokia devices which are all polycarb, like this 1520, the Lumia 1020, the 920. They're all unibody plastic phones. And we also now have a line of Nokia devices which are metal edged with polycarb backs, like the Lumia 925 and this Lumia Icon. I just find it very interesting seeing this company explore different avenues of how they can deliver a Lumia device, a Nokia device, without just simply changing the screen size and ending up with the exact same aesthetic for every single product that they offer. HTC, you should maybe take notice. So folks, those have been my experiences using the Lumia 1520. I'm definitely gonna be holding on to this just for a little while yet, go through a couple updates. I really wanna see what happens once we start getting Windows Phone 8.1 delivered to these devices. I'm really excited about the Windows Phone ecosystem finally evolving and catching up to Android and iOS. So if there are any questions or anything you want to know about the phone, definitely drop me comments below, because I'll be doing a few more little roundup videos on different apps and services as Windows Phone moves forward, especially against Android competitors. As always, thank you so much for watching, for sharing my videos, for subscribing, and getting into fun discussions and debates down in the comments. You guys have been super civil and a lot of fun to work with. And folks, I will catch you all on the next review.